So,
I'm wondering, as you look at the budget and possibility of spending cuts, what solutions would you propose for an $8 billion budget deficit that would go along with this compact for the middle class?
Well, first of all, it's a little difficult to answer that because we've not been given access to any information. We have not been included in any discussions whatsoever. While we've asked multiple times, offered to be helpful, without that, it's very difficult. I can tell you that we've been told, for example, that the budget will be balanced without using the revenue that could be made available from VLTs at racetracks. That's $850 million. That could avoid a whole lot of cuts that we're anticipating, devastating cuts to people in Ohio. We've been told that they will not continue to freeze income tax rates at the 2008 rates. They will cut income taxes with that fifth year that we froze a year ago. That's another $850 million or so. So I can say right there we're looking at well over $1.5 billion in revenue that can be used to fill an awful lot of necessary holes in this budget. I can also tell you what we wouldn't do. We would not cut local governments so that they have to either cut police and fire and other vital services or raise local taxes. And then tell the local governments, we're really not cutting you because we're going to make collective bargaining disappear and you can make up the money, the hundreds of millions of dollars that we're cutting you on the backs of your employees. I can tell you we would not cut optional services from Medicaid, which we're told may be happening. And optional are not really optional services. Those are optional, meaning optional that the state doesn't have to provide them. But it's not optional for people who need an organ transplant or need therapy services or need dental care or need optical care. I can tell you that we would not slash education funding for the kids in our state who need it, which is basic to job creation in this state. We need good education. We need to fund good education. We can't allow unprecedented cuts in K through 12 education, which are currently being threatened. So I can tell you a lot of things we would not do, and unfortunately those happen to be all on the list that we're hearing the governor does want to do.
Would you want a tax increase?
Again, you know, at this point it's impossible for me to comment on that because we haven't seen anything. But I can tell you again, I wouldn't cut income taxes right now.
But earlier, what are some of the amendments, if any, that the Democratic leadership is going to propose for Senate Bill 5 as the hearings get underway this week?
We're talking about that right now. I don't know that I can currently tell you what will be proposed, but the bill is so bad. I do understand the Senate Democrats' view that they couldn't offer amendments because you couldn't repair that bill. There were no efforts. I mean, we all know how things work here in Columbus, and when we want something to happen that everybody can agree on, or at least many people can agree on, there's typically meetings with stakeholders, there's constant discussions. We've seen that hundreds of times in the last just 2 years. And typically when people get together, they can come up with reasonable solutions. None of that has happened with Senate Bill 5. This bill came out of the Senate, probably out of the governor's office. We haven't had a chance to participate at all in it. Representative Lundy, do you want to talk a little bit about your bill that you
Last week we had, in fact we're dropping that bill today, the Listen First proposal. The Listen First proposal is trying to take a more constructive approach to this whole process. It basically calls for, with these major policy, these extreme changes that are being proposed by the governor and the Republican-controlled legislature, such as privatizing the correction system, possibly leasing or selling the turnpike, SB 5, that we actually go throughout the state and give Ohioans a chance to really weigh in on these important issues. It calls for mandatory 6 public hearings that would be held across the state on each one of these major policy issues. Representatives from the legislature, from the general public, from business, from labor, from government would all be part of those panels. And it would give us a chance to gather more feedback. I don't understand what the big rush is here. These are extreme changes that require a lot of input, a lot of feedback, a lot of constructive thought, but instead we seem to just be railroading, in essence, a lot of these things that are very extreme in nature. So the whole idea of the Listen First concept is, let's bring Ohioans together, let's have these town hall meetings, let's have a constructive conversation instead of this current destructive tone, and let's try to work together. As the leader has pointed out here in Columbus, I think you're all familiar that interested parties normally come together, but interested parties haven't had the opportunity. In fact, when the substitute bill came back, no one had a chance to weigh in on the drastic changes that were made on a bill that clearly was far worse than the original bill.
So will you be offering amendments then? Are you committed to offering amendments?
It's not. We'll let you know as soon as we can.
Are there any parts of the bill that you would say, you know, this may be necessary, we may need to do some changes here in collective bargaining, maybe things have gotten way too far in labor's favor over the years. Are there things that maybe are there pieces of this bill that you can agree with?
Well, I don't want to be standing up here and basically bargaining against myself. You know, I think if you've looked at the way we've dealt with things in the past, there's been give and take, and we're certainly open to discussing anything. But you know, those processes weren't open to us this time. You know, we're happy to talk about changes to the bill. We're happy to get together and try to figure out what to do. Clearly we have a budget problem, but the idea of balancing the budget on the backs of the middle class is not acceptable, period.
Can I comment on that also?
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to say one thing. I think we're missing the major point here of this discussion. Collective bargaining is a mechanism. It's the vehicle in which these negotiations take place. There have been concessions made. There's not been any acknowledgement of that. Wage freezes, furloughs. There are a number of things that have happened over the last 4, 5, 6 years, concessions that have been made. Whatever the desired additional sacrifices that are being asked for, those can be requested and negotiated through collective bargaining. It is a process. So I think we have to be honest and above board about what the ultimate outcome of this is. If it is to get more shared sacrifice, more concessions from labor and from our public employees, they've been doing that, and they've already said that they're willing to continue to do that through the collective bargaining process. There is no need to eliminate collective bargaining to accomplish the stated objectives. All they're doing is eliminating the process.
Jim, just a comment came to mind as I was listening to your question, and I believe it may have been you, or certainly I know this was published in the Dispatch maybe a month or 5 weeks ago. This talk about, this emanating from the administration about collective bargaining resulting in a significant tilt in favor of labor is just not true. It's a myth. The facts show that since 2008, there have been 20 cases that have gone to the final and binding arbitration process, or the statute calls it conciliation. Of those 20 cases, 10 have been determined in favor of management, 10 have been determined in favor of labor. With overall, in terms of the percentage of the wage increase allocation, little over 2%, which leans closer to the management side in the aggregate than labor. So where's this notion that the process in and of itself has tilted dramatically in favor of labor? It's nonsense. Number two, the next point I would make is much has been said about a couple of examples of arbitration awards coming forward, but I'm hearing no talk of the thousands of instances where the process has worked. And a conservative estimate in terms of the number of collective bargaining agreements that currently exist in the public sector in this state, there are several thousand. And the fact that only 20 of those have gone to conciliation since 2008 is in and of itself proof that the current structure is forcing the parties to the table to achieve consensus. And to me, that's what collective bargaining is for.
I have a couple of technical questions. Minority Leader, you said that you could not unfreeze the taxes. But wasn't that done by the last General Assembly by the way the freeze was worded? That it automatically got unfrozen on January 1st and we went back to the tax reduction?
Given the financial situation we have now, I would certainly be interested in having us look at continuing the freeze.
Okay, and then the second question I had was, one of you mentioned that teachers could still go to jail. Wasn't there a floor limit on the Senate side that eliminated that, or do you still see it as a possibility that teachers could be jailed for striking?
No, the amendment did not effectively do that. It's my understanding that teachers can still be sent to jail for striking.
You mentioned that you would oppose using or privatizing either the turnpike or the lottery for one-time money for operating funds. Would you favor that if the money were to go into something permanent like infrastructure or maybe some sort of a revolving fund?
Well, you know, we looked at those kinds of options 2 years ago, and we couldn't figure out how to make it work at that time given the economics. We would look at it again, but clearly to balance the budget. We didn't do it then to balance the budget, we wouldn't do it now to balance the budget.
What's your big concern about particularly maybe the turnpike or the lottery issue? What do you believe is the harm that outweighs the good there?
In privatizing the turnpike?
Privatizing or doing some type of outsourcing?
Well, if you sell or long-term lease the turnpike to private companies, probably somebody from out of the country, you're setting up a situation, first of all, where you have an issue of how you're going to continue to maintain the turnpike, who's going to pay for that. You know, there's hundreds of millions of dollars that we would lose in revenue if we get rid of the turnpike. In addition, what about controls on the tolls? Is there going to be a limit on what the private company can do in terms of increasing tolls? Is there, because otherwise it's a backdoor tax if you're just allowing the tolls to be increased by some private company. The turnpike is critical to business in Ohio. We are a state which we often talk about, we have a great location, and that makes us a logistics center. We should be building on that, not tearing that down by taking the turnpike and turning it over to private interests.
Given the majorities that Republicans hold in the House, what can you do to either, get this compact with the middle class, or I guess slow the Senate Bill 5 from going forward? Democrats in Wisconsin have the option of leaving. They don't need just a simple majority there. So, in other words, what can you do to stop Republicans right now?
We'll do the only thing we can do. We'll fight like hell.